This is a meeting of CEO 101 where new hires to GitLab can ask questions. First of all, welcome everyone. Thanks for starting. We have 36 people in the call. I'm Sid, I'm the CEO and co-founder at GitLab. And Juliana has the first question. Thank you for that. Do you want to verbalize it?
Sure, happy to. So my question is, why Tanuki? I did see in the handbook there was a brief explanation about how Tanukis operate as a team, which resonated with the way GitLab operates and our team structure. But there are other animals that operate that way as well. So I'm wondering if there's anything specifically about the Tanuki.
Yeah, so it's a bit of like, I don't know, reversing history. There's a better way to say this, but changing the story after the fact. When GitLab got started as an open source project, it didn't have a logo. And at a certain point, someone donated the logo. His name was Ricardo Mars, and that was probably in the first year. And we ran with that logo for like 4 years or something. And then around the time we graduated from Y Combinator, people started complaining, as in 2 people independently said, I had nightmares where I was chased in my dreams by your logo, by that fox. If you Google GitLab old logo, you'll see it's a pretty scary logo. And it was discontent. It's like frowning. And we'll say the fox will smile as soon as we're bigger than GitHub. So we had an internal thing where make the fox smile. Also, there was confusion whether it was a fox or a raccoon because it has elements of both. And then coincidence has it that on like the busiest and most important day of the company, graduating from Y Combinator, it's called an event called Demo Day, where you have investors. Who was in that room there? Ricardo Mars, the guy who donated the logo as an investor. So Dimitri walked up to him and like, hey, thanks, and thanks for donating that logo. By the way, we think we're ready for a new logo. Would you mind if we replace it? Because we still appreciate you contributing it. It's like, no, totally fine. By the way, I know just the person to help you with the new logo. I know someone who specializes in Fox logos. So that's great. We went to that person. We got an awesome new logo. But then we always kind of were like, is it a fox or a raccoon? That was still in my mind. And then someone pointed out that in Japan, the Tanuki means raccoon dog. And it has some not so good connotations, but also some awesome ones. Like in Super Mario, if you get the raccoon dog, the Tanuki suit, you can certainly fly and wag your tail and stuff like that. So we thought that was funny. There's already enough people called that logo a fox. So ours is a Tanuki.
Very cool. It's nice to have the backstory. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks for asking. Indre?
Hi. Yes. So my question really was, as we approach the new year, what are the main focus this year, really? And I know, this is probably going to be a big year with the company planning to go public in Q4. But so just around the strategic priorities have outlined this year. And the second question was to do with improving the customer experience. So do you have any plans to do that across, all the different areas?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for asking. I think I more think quarter by quarter. So we just talked about the goals for the next quarter that will start 1st of Feb. And I think sales and marketing wise, want to make sure that we're never behind again in hiring salespeople or in building pipeline. We're kind of hurting this quarter because like 6 months, 9 months ago, we weren't fast enough. So we're going to make sure that never happens again. And then product wise, we love for people to use more of the product. And that means what the goal is going to be raising SMAU, stage monthly active users. And we're going to do that by having more monthly active users, which always helps, but also by raising SPU, stages per user. So if you have a certain user, how many stages do they use? Do they just use create or also verify? And do they also use release and monitoring and defend and everything else? And we want for every user to use as much as possible of the product. So that's going to be a focus there. And then team-wise, I want to I want us to invest a lot more in training, making sure we have everything in the handbook that you need to train on, that we have tests, that you can get a certification, and that we have kind of discussion groups where we talk, discuss the subject and share our own experiences. So that's going to be focused there. Apart from that, a big priority is making sure that the experience around renewals is better. So getting licenses and things like that. There's a lot of work going on to make that a better experience. That being said, we just had a group conversation for support this morning, and the customer satisfaction with the licensing process jumped from 80% to 90%. So a lot of progress there. But right now that's taking a giant effort by everyone, and we got to get that in kind of a calmer state where it's just a good experience by default.
Great, thanks.
Thanks for the question. Rin?
Hi, Sid. I was noticing that under our diversity and inclusivity value, neurodiversity is mentioned, which as a neurodivergent GitLabber myself, that's amazing to see. I was wondering what some company goals we have this year are to continue to iterate on that value point of being welcoming and inclusive to those that are neurodivergent, and if there are any plans to potentially highlight the amazing work of our fellow neurodivergent GitLabbers, both daily and at events like GitLab Contribute.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm not aware of any initiatives that are planned, but our company mission is everyone can contribute. I would love the things you mentioned. I would love to see them happen. So feel free to propose them. Feel free to do one thing yourself. Feel free to iterate. Get a blog post out. We have GitLab filter where you can just post. So I'd love to see it, but I'm not aware of any plans.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for asking. Kendra, welcome to the company. Do you want to verbalize your question?
Hi, nice to meet you. Coming from a remote environment for the last 10 years, I noticed that one of the things that tends to be a pushing point for a lot of remote companies is making sure that there's not burnout. So what are some of the headwinds or lessons that you've seen as a leader working with a fully remote team in several different countries?
Yeah, a great question. I think first of all, the danger of working remote is that you don't have as much separation between your personal life and your company life. Otherwise, it's if you have a change of location, it's easier to distinguish the two and not constantly feel that pressure of like, I have emails that I didn't answer yet. Another thing is we're a global company, so we have time zones. So people are sometimes kind of forced to work strange hours to be able to be in a synchronous call with each other. So we should do as much as possible asynchronous. Also travel. We should reduce travel to the minimum needed. Like we have Zoom and other amazing things. Travel is just super hard on your health and your time. And yeah, this is a startup. We're growing very, very fast. We're more than doubling every year. We're always behind. There's always things that we didn't hire for that role yet. We didn't find the right person yet, and the work is still there, and it has to happen. So I think those are kind of risks for that. I think you mentioned burnout specifically. We don't want people to work crazy hours, but if you're talking about burnout specifically, it's not just working long hours, but it's mostly a lack of empowerment. So I think it's really important to kind of stick to the DRI value. And I'm not totally there yet, where sometimes I make a decision where someone else has to do the work. So they should be the DRI and I shouldn't make the decision. So I think that's going to be something to keep focusing on, making sure that there's a single DRI. It's the person who actually has to do the work, because nothing is more frustrating than being accountable for something that you don't have enough influence over.
Thank you.
Thank you. Johan.
Hi, Sid. Great to meet you virtually. My question is in regards to the Series E and your past experiences with VCs and investors. In your opinion, what has been your greatest learning so far in regards to these processes?
Thanks for asking. I think one of the things that I'm discovering time and time again, you need to create a sense of urgency at the other side. And the best way to do that is to have multiple parties in play. So it's always a funnel. You want to kind of keep everything at the same stage and have everyone end up at the end of the funnel at the same time. When given the opportunity, any investor will wait. So there has to be a reason why now. And the best reason is because otherwise someone else will do it and we'll miss out. We're rediscovering that lesson again and again, also in kind of non-financing dealings with investors. The same thing applies. And another thing is that what was funny for me was that it's super enjoyable so far to deal with investors. They're super smart. And I thought it would be boring to repeat the same story, but you kind of get to A/B test your story, like make it better, see what points they look up, what points they kind of get bored. And I thought it would be repetitive and boring, and it's anything but. So I was happy because there's a lot of investor meetings in my future.
Thanks, Sid.
Thank you. Khan?
Hey, Sid. GitLab is a company with great culture as far as most of us can see so far. It's a company with lots of openness to our team members and also customers. I really appreciate the handbook, by the way, and I'm sure lots of team members and customers also appreciate it as well. But we're also going through a large growth. How do you see this culture going along with this growth?
Yeah. I think we're in a better position than most companies to keep our culture concentrated, maybe. In a lot of companies, when the culture is only embedded in people, and if you add more people, it dilutes. We've done a good job of writing down our values and our sub-values, done a good job of reinforcing our values. But I think the biggest headwind this year is going to be for transparency. You see, as we become a public company, you're accountable for everything you say, and the default reaction of companies is to say less, because that makes it easier to say the correct things. And we'll have to see whether we are able to keep saying as much and even more than we said before. And that's something I'm going to strive for this year. And it continues to be that the value that is hardest to execute on is iteration. So I'm doing iteration office hours and constantly challenging people, asking them, like, can we make it smaller? Can we do something smaller, faster? And I think that's something that will never go away. And I hope to also kind of do trainings on that to middle management, so that it's more widespread in the company.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hila.
Yeah, so what is GitLab's North Star metric, meaning the most important metric for the entire company to focus on now? Is it IACV? We heard that a lot. If so, why did we pick that metric?
Yeah, thank you. It is IACV, so I'm glad that came across. Maybe not to the extent that you felt certain about it, but at least it came across that you suspected it. They say at Y Combinator, growth solves all problems. And it's of course ridiculous. Like on one hand, like you can be growing and do horrible things, but if you grow, you have kind of the money to solve problems. And the value of a company is like its expected profit in the future. And profit is a combination of like revenue and margins. And margins tend to be inherent to your business model, where enterprise software, about 85%. So the other factor is the one we can influence, revenue. So normally you pick revenue as your North Star. However, we are a subscription company. So instead of looking at the revenue, we can look at the the change in revenue, which is the differential on revenue, which is an even better metric to focus on. So that's why we focus on that. How much new revenue did we get net of the people who canceled? Like IACV is like $10 extra, $1 of a cancel, and then you get $9 of IACV. So that's why that's the metric to focus on. And if you look like why we're able to invest so much in, for example, R&D, it's because people expect us to grow at a really rapid pace for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Daniel.
I see many aspects of continuous improvement or Kaizen in our values. Has that ever been considered as an addition to our values?
I'm not sure it should be a value, but I agree that that we practice a lot of continuous improvement in Kaizen. I think some of the things that you would call Kaizen, we call iteration. So I think that's similar, but yeah, and maybe it shouldn't be a top line value, but maybe it can be a sub value under iteration to remind people that that is kind of the same thing. I'm not against that. But yeah, I do agree. Continuous improvement, iteration, whatever you call it, but keep making things better in small steps instead of a big plan that takes 2 years to roll out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That actually answers why I thought of that so deeply when reading the handbook. And I'm like, well, I can't put my finger on it. And iteration, I think, is a good synonym almost. So yep. Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Sid. So in our handbook, we list out I think 21 of the kind of biggest risks to GitLab. But as the CEO and co-founder, if you look at these risks, what really keeps you up at night, right? What are the things that you are kind of top of mind and are your primary concerns? Outside, looking at just the top maybe 3. What are the primary things that you worry about?
Yeah, so the biggest risk page is sorted in what I think are our biggest risks. And I think that many companies kind of over-rotate on competition and under-rotate on like what they can influence themselves. So instead of spending a lot of time on the competition, we have them only at number 11. Like if we make sure that we hire great people, we offboard the people that are not working out in their function, we keep going really fast. We can, when there is a challenge in the ecosystem or competition-wise, we can adjust course. So it's, I don't know, if you have a better airplane, you can just go above the weather. I think it's a bit like that. Yeah, if you're in a prop plane, you should be really afraid of that weather. If you're in a jet, an airline, you can just go over it. And I think it's like that. If we build a company that goes really, really fast and that's able to adjust course quickly and keep hiring great people, then I think we have many more options, irrespective of the weather that will come on our way. Obviously, the competition isn't sitting still, and then we'll feel that. But,
I think that's a great response, especially considering that I came from competition, and I can tell you that they definitely we're top of mind for them, and I think it distracts often from making happier product and hiring happier people, as opposed to just worrying about you, like you said, having that prop plane instead of that jet. I love that. Thank you.
Thanks. And just a very small side note: we don't necessarily hire happy people. We don't necessarily. It's not a company goal for you to be happy per se. The neurodiversity came up earlier. Some people aren't happy, and that's okay too. We do want to make sure that they have ample time for the most important things in life, friends and family, or family and friends. And we want to be a great a great partner for them and treat them fairly and make sure that they make progress in all those things and give them realistic tasks and all those things. But you look at our values page, hopefully happy is not part of our values or what we strive for. I've seen that a lot of companies that subscribe to that, it's kind of, they make it hard for people to speak up that they're unhappy with something. And that's the last thing we want. I know that wasn't, sorry for the rant. That wasn't your intention. I think we're aligned, but there's asking people to be happy or forcing people to be happy is not something we want. We want people to bring their whatever they feel to work, and it's totally cool to say, yeah, I'm feeling great today.
No, that's a great call, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you too. Kelsey.
You mentioned recent challenges with pipeline generation, and as a new contributor to the sales development team, this is a primary focus for me. So I'm curious, what is most important to you in regards to pipeline growth, and what changes would you like to see from the sales org this year?
Thanks for asking. I think the pipeline, like 6 to 9 months ago, we didn't hire salespeople as quickly as we should have, and we didn't invest our marketing money. Like we were under budget because we didn't put up the money because we weren't sure whether we were spending it right. So, and sales wise, we had some hiring of managers to do before we could hire the individual contributors. So it's understandable. Like I understand why we did that at the time, but it cost us to fall behind our plan. And now this quarter that's a problem. And it takes 6 to 9 months because that's our sales cycle for the bigger deals. Regarding pipeline growth and the sales org, I think we're on the right path. So I don't have any super concrete suggestions. As I said, I'm really about training, and I'm seeing the sales training improve a lot already. So that's super exciting. I'm going to be focused on trying to keep the handbook as a single source of truth, which is going to be a struggle. But it's amazing that we're making progress on like onboarding salespeople quicker. And then in the pipeline generation in marketing, we see bigger focus on kind of pipe to spend. So, hey, if I put an extra marginal dollar in, how much pipeline am I going to generate? Our goal's about 5. And we're getting better at measuring for every initiative, like what did it contribute? And that will allow us to make better choices and put the money towards the channels that can still use an extra marginal dollar. Does that address your question?
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for asking. Tim?
Yeah. How has GitLab contribute and remote work been in terms of cost comparison to having an office space? Now I know that remote workers is not just about saving money, but do we end up spending about the same amount of money as having office space? And I come from a company that used to do a global retreat every 4 years, but we got to a size where it was just unmanageable. How will this work in the future with 2,000 people? If that's kind of our target goal by the end of this year.
Yeah, so it's about 3 to 4% of payroll to organize GitLab Contribute. Having people co-located on office is about 10%. So it's 2.5 times less expensive.
Wow.
Now, that being said, if you are co-located, if you have an office, very frequently you still have an offsite. Like it's not because you have an office height, you automatically have this experience where there's a week in the year that's focused on meeting other people, getting to know each other better. So it's not the office isn't a substitute in my mind. It's something different. The only thing is if you have an office, people tend to be in the same area and it tends to be more affordable to organize because you don't have as many flight tickets. But it's about $3,000 per person, with flights being half. So you'd go from 4% to 2%. So really you're saving 5x compared to having an office. Of course, we're doing remote not because of the savings, but we're doing it because well, they matter too, but the most important reason is we get to hire better people and retain them longer. That is the biggest benefit. And about like getting bigger, yeah. Very few people do an offsite with a huge team. It gets super visible on the balance sheet. And we're going to spend, I think, $3.5 million or something this year on the offsite, and that's going to keep increasing. I think the reasons for doing it are still the same. I think the benefit people are getting are still the same. So I don't see any horizon on it. There's some stadiums that host 80,000 people. So I think we've got a long way to go before we're at the end of capacity.
Thanks.
That was the last question. Thanks so much for joining this. Welcome to GitLab. And I hope you have a good time here, and that you're happy and sad. But overall, you think that it's a good company to work for. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.